Okay, third time's a charm. So last night I was posting something on Instagram. I had taken a couple pictures of the sky at the cemetery because the clouds were looking really cool. Like when I was getting ready to finish walking the dogs, I could probably post them on, do a little post with them, but I didn't even think about that. But I did on Instagram. And I mean, it's like no big deal. It's just pictures of the clouds, right? But when I was taking the one behind the car, I took a couple shots of it because I just couldn't get it to look right because, like, you know that when you can see the rain falling before it gets to you, it's kind of like that, but it didn't show up in the picture very well. However, what I did get was it looks like in the clouds there's a bunny. And bunnies keep appearing here lately. Of course, it's fall, so of course they're everywhere anyway. We got them, I mean, they've been out all year anyway. But like they keep appearing in like cards and stuff. Or like the other day I watched Jordan Peele's Us. And there's a couple scenes where they got like all these cages of bunnies. And so I had watched that a couple days before. And then yesterday I go to take a picture, and of course it looks like one of the bunnies. I'm wanting to say that I've heard the coloring called like Harlequin, but I'm not going to commit to that. But it's kind of like a light gray with some darker gray spots. But like I didn't see it when I was looking at the clouds until I took the picture. And then it's like, hey, that looks like a bunny. And so last night I wanted to post it on Instagram. And when I was talking about it, I said it actually makes me think of this dream that I had once, right? And this was like shortly after I got married to my ex. And I had this dream. It was very vivid and it stayed with me. And I'm pretty sure I've talked about it on here before. But in the dream, it was like there was this, I mean, it was kind of a fancy pool, but not super fancy. But like it had like multiple sections to it. And the water was waist high and it was crystal clear, and there were all these koi fish in it. And in the dream, my ex was in the water, and he's like picking up different fish and like comparing the colors together. You know, I've talked on here a lot about how when we went after Ziva, the reason Ziva was selected was because he like was looking her and her sister over. Her sister was not perfectly symmetrical with all the markings and everything, and Ziva was. So because she was perfect, we got her, right? Which, I mean, obviously that's my dog, that's my baby. So I'm glad I got her, but still, it was, you know, the point was she looked the way that he deemed acceptable, so that was the one that we ended up with. I personally was, my mindset was, it's a rescue, I'm here for it. It's a dog, right? I love dogs. I love rescued animals. So, yes, okay. But anyway, in the dream, he's picking up like these different fish and comparing them next to each other to figure out what looks good together. And in the dream, I decide to get in the water and help, I guess. But when I picked up the fish, it turned into a bunny. And suddenly, you know, like all the water goes away and there's just bunnies everywhere, right? So it's like he was looking at fish, but then here I come in and like mess the whole thing up by picking up a fish that becomes a bunny, and then suddenly everything's a bunny. And I remember talking to my former in-laws about the dream because it was very vivid and I remembered it very clearly. And my mother-in-law at the time, I remember she like got this real excited look on her face, and she's talking about, it's a sign of fertility, right? And she's thinking on that end. And when I had the dream, I was like, that doesn't feel like it's quite it. And what I realized afterwards was essentially it's like my ex and I were two different species, right? Not that we weren't both human, but like just our natures. Because like he's all about the appearance of things, right? He wants it to look a certain way, to appear like everything's good to go. Like, like my family with my grandfather's illusion of everything being perfect, his perfectly happy family, even though nobody's really perfect. It's just, or nobody's really happy. It's just, it looks like it to the outside world because we're spending all our time together. And so clearly we must enjoy each other's company, right? Which you'd think in theory. But then when you actually are there in the middle of it and it's just bickering nonstop or dumb shit, then it's like, not so much. But, it's kind of that way, just like in the dream was, he's very much just like my family was on that end with, it has to look right. And that doesn't work for me, right? So it's like in that end, I mean, we're completely not on the same page at all, right? And I'm thinking okay. Another thing I mentioned on that was, it makes me think of that whole deal with, I think it was 2019, pretty confident it was 2019 because I was getting ready to leave him for the last time. The whole Bakersfield thing came up with Keanu Reeves, right? And there's something with the flight got canceled for whatever reason. He was, he could rent a car, but he ended up, thinking, well, then all these people are still screwed because they can't just do that. So he ended up renting like a van or something, and a bunch of them went to their next destination together, right? But then it started this thing where Keanu Reeves is suddenly everywhere on social media because people are just, talking about how wonderful of a person he was or is, and, all these things that he's done over the years where he's, connected with people that, compared to his fame, are essentially nothing compared to that, right? So like they haven't done these things, the pictures with him eating lunch with the homeless guy or whatever, that kind of stuff. And I got the message loud and clear at that, like when that whole thing came up, it was like, if there is one, there are more. Those are your people. Find them, right? So then it became this thing of, well, how do you do that, right? First off, you gotta get rid of the ones that are not your people, which in that case, the immediate case was my ex had to go. So obviously he went, right? So took way longer than it should have, but everything serves a purpose. But like that was the biggest thing. It's like going back to the dreams, just we weren't the same species. The things that either of us cared about, were not aligned. So I'm thinking the idea of, like the biblical idea of being equally yoked, right? It's like that would be a scenario in which we were not, right? Because he just, gave a shit about illusions and appearances and making things look like it was supposed to. Whereas for me, I don't care if something looks fucked up if like the heart of it is that's ultimately the purpose. Did we screw up to get there? Probably. But in that process, did we learn from it and did we grow from it? That's the stuff I care about, right? So like that's like essentially my whole journey. I mean, granted, I was not seeking to grow my channel when I started, and it was all a big hot mess, and, I was just crying all over the place all the time, or trying to figure out what I was even doing or what I was talking about, like actually working through the hard stuff, it was a necessary part of the process, right? And to me, that was the importance in what I was doing, was that it was true to the situation. It was true to me. It was from a place of authenticity and actually me dealing with things that were painful and ugly at times, and, just being a hot mess, right? And, like I've said many times, it was never, the purpose starting out was never to do the thing that was, suddenly makes everybody know who I am or whatever. Like that was never what it was about. It was about processing. It was the process of speaking through, telling stories about what was going on for me and how it was affecting me, and, where I was linking wounding to, and like over my past, and like something that triggered me, and then I had to work through that, all that stuff. It was never about just, it's not that we're here trying to get rich and famous, whatever. It's specifically, for some reason, I have felt like I was supposed to just talk, right? Use my voice, the thing I've been terrified to do all my life, right? So it's been, reconciling that point first, the whole fear of using my voice, and then beginning to be able to do so. But as I've, started to let go the things that I was just carrying for years and years and wouldn't look at because it was too painful, it started to ease up, right? And then I start making connections that I wouldn't, that I hadn't previously been able to make, because I hadn't put forth the effort to really work to the root of what the situation was, right? And another thing that I'm thinking of immediately, and I probably would have talked about in the post yesterday, but it would have made it too long, so 12, was this, this is silly. Okay, so I got really into the book of Daniel back in my churchy days, right? And that was hands down my favorite book. And I especially liked the part where, Daniel and his friends were given new names by the king, basically to make them acceptable to the king, right? He was renaming them after his gods to make them acceptable to him, right? But what I liked about it was they never lost sight of who they were, right? So, the story was Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I remember, like, at one point when I was reading through it, I got really hung up on their actual names, right? So it's like, I know one was Mishael, and Azariah, and I forget the other one. Azariah was Abednego, right? But this is the silly part. I think I was an undergrad when I really latched onto the story and really fell in love with this name and like this particular like character. And it's like, I don't know what it is about this person, but I really like, the name. I was just linking it with the name immediately. And of course, the king renamed him Abednego. And the part where it gets a little, I enjoyed it more. And it completely came out of left field as far as when I was processing through it. And then it was like, because, okay. So I always loved that specific piece where the king renamed them, but they never lost sight of who they were. They were still doing what they were meant to do, using their God-given gifts, and still, doing what the king wanted, but not at the cost of who they were. And at one point when they asked the guards to let them fast, and the guards said no because he didn't want them looking their appearance to look disheveled compared to anybody else or whatever, and they assured him that they wouldn't. So, I think the compromise in that situation was they only ate like vegetables and stuff, right? And of course, I had this book for a while that was called The Daniel Fast, and it was about fasting Daniel's way, right? So, which was, what, veggies? Okay, so, yeah, that makes sense, right? But anyway, so, need to remember to breathe. So, right. So, enter my ex, and, go to seminary, and I did my basic training time and all these things. And then he ends up, he was in the custody case before, I really want to know what that bird is. It's gigantic. It's a hawk. I think you kind of could see it, go past the window. But, he, came right. I never have my camera. All I would have had to do is flip it, but my windows are fucking dirty, and I didn't know for sure what it was until it was right there next to me. Anyway. Hawks are important. Anyway, enter situation with my ex's custody case, right? And I end up so aggravated. I've talked about the story enough, so I'm going to try to skip a whole lot of details, because that's not the point. Okay, so I get very involved with getting all the information in front of one judge, right? And I talked to an attorney after my ex's other attorney had quit because she could not handle the stress of the situation anymore. So I send some emails to, I think it was just to this guy, honestly. And I said, okay, so here's the situation. And I said, is this something that you could do? And it was get all the pieces in front of a singular judge, so we don't have all the confusion of having different pieces of information in different places, right? And could he also represent my ex's brother for the situation, because he was getting unfairly dragged into things. And, attorney said had to make sure that nothing else, that there were no conflicts of interest or whatever, that he would be able to handle the situation, right? And he said, he got back to me and said, we can do that. It's like, okay. Right? So then I start focusing in on all these details and putting it all in one place, right? The thing. Okay. My former in-laws were very much, it's a bad bang day again. There we go. That's better. Okay. So chick had her stuff opened up so they could see whatever she was doing, whenever she was doing it, right? And, for us working on this custody case, it worked out great because, the GoFundMe thing she started to try to get money out of people, where she was saying that, her son had been abused by his dad and his uncle, and she's trying to have the money to pay for the attorney or whatever other things. And, they're being unfairly treated and nobody's believing her and blah, 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 whatever. That was stuff that was used. But the means of which how we went about finding some of this stuff was we ended up knowing her screen names and whatnot, right? Well, they did, because I wasn't trying to get involved in that kind of stuff. But they were snooping. And, on Facebook, part of her screen name had Abednego in it. I did not make the connection for some time. I remember sitting there talking to my in-laws, and my former mother-in-law looked it up or pulled it up and said, what is this? And it's like, I don't know. That's kind of, as I said, it looks familiar or something. I think part of it was she pronounced it differently. She wasn't sure how to pronounce it. Shit, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing it right, but I'm just going with what I've heard the most in the past. But I remember that I was at his aunt's house with his mom, his aunt, their brother, and I'm wanting to say there was another aunt there. And it just hit me. It was just like, holy fuck, I'm going to seminary and I did not even make this connection at all, right? But the character that I loved from that story, in the book of Daniel, was Azariah, which was, given this other name by the king at the time, which was Abednego. And she was putting, Abednego was her, like, in her screen name. And it just really, I don't think it hit me. Like, once I realized that point, I think I even wrote a letter to the attorney with, like, just a bunch of different things that I had pieced together, and I made this connection. I think I even shared that with him. What I said, something to the effect of, I believe, was that she's buying into the illusion, and she wants to, she's telling the stories to try to fit her scenario, to fit the illusion. And it's like, for me, it's all about authenticity. And I don't give a shit if, something looks good or not, right? It's like, I've spent, I spent a good chunk of my life trying to fit other people's illusions, and it did not go well for me. And so, that was the biggest thing, was I can't do illusions. And I see how it actually harms people. And, in like most of the cases that I speak of, me, so that's kind of what I had to roll with, right? But okay, so how did I get there? I always love it when I do that. Going back to I think that stemmed from the different species thing, and just like, it's a whole different ball game when you're trying to fit some sort of illusion versus that's not gonna do anything. That's the damn sun right back there. Versus wanting to be true to yourself and to who you actually are, versus trying to buy into any of the illusions that the world wants us to buy into, right? The scenario that you could possibly be, okay, that having just a regular job where you're not having to kill yourself. Okay, if you work 40 hours a week for $20 an hour, you're still kind of struggling to get to do the things that we're told we have to do in life, right? And to be happy, right? The kids, the car, the spouse, the blah blah blah, all that shit, right? It's like, we're sold this illusion that we have to do all these things to be happy. But if you really, look at what's going on, it's like, most of the people that have bought into that bullshit, that have maybe gotten those things, aren't happy. And it's like, that was one of my biggest frustrations too, is like, anytime, holy crap, anytime I have been talking to somebody who, that really bothers me now. I wish it wasn't like cold outside. I would sit outside. But just like, we're sold an illusion, but the pieces that we're given and told we have to do to get there, we can't actually get there by using those things, right? Because, okay, like, the cost of living's gone up, but the freaking minimum wage doesn't go up, right? So it's like all this shit. So the things that we were told should work It's bullshit. And then we end up in this system where, you know, the freaking people at the top are actively working to fuck us all over, right? So it's like, this is bullshit, right? So obviously living the illusion isn't going to get us there. But also, okay, I think I started going on this too. Like the people who end up married miserably ever after, right? You know, I'm thinking immediately the girl I worked with at Honda who had only shitty things to say about her husband. And I was just, you know, we were working together on this one station one day, and she was trash talking him, and my thought was just, then why the fuck are you married to him? It's like, if you hate him this much, somebody else out there might actually, you know, might actually love what he has to offer, right? So if it's clearly not you, so why are you with him? Why are you together like that, right? But that too is part of the illusion, right? That it's better to be married to somebody than to be alone. Fuck that. I've been married to just anybody and it wasn't that good, right? So it was like, you know, it was the nice little combination of his toxicity mixed with my toxicity was not a good one, right? And we were not a match at all. Like, there again, we weren't even the same freaking species, right? So, yeah. Which I think is kind of the biggest part of my journey too, is I wanted to know what got people into those situations and then left them feeling stuck. And what worked out for me was realizing that my fucking belief system was fucking me over, right? Like the idea that you need somebody outside of yourself to save you, which sets you up to always looking for somebody else to have the right answer because you can't rely on your own intuition. But your intuition is a God-given thing, and it's a good thing if you learn to trust it and to follow it. Good things can happen. But, you know, like that whole, okay, that intuition piece, that's the reason I started the channel, right? And, you know, okay, so as of this point in time, it's like October 22nd, 2025. Last I knew, I had 142 subscribers. And when I started, you know, so it's like right there. It's like, I'm not just trying to be found by anybody, right? It's like, I want my people to find me. But the whole reason that I started the channel was because this whole twin flame idea came up, and I had this sense of he had to be in a spotlight for me to find him, but how would he ever find me if I didn't start doing more than I'd ever done? Which, as I've said many times, was essentially hide, right? When things get scary, just go like into shutdown mode, you know, go, you know, if it's a situation where there's a whole lot of energies assaulting my energy, go hide in a bathroom, right? Just get away from everything and go isolate, right? That's not help. It's not necessarily a bad thing depending on how much you're doing. And I was kind of, the way I've done it a lot in my lifetime has been detrimental to me, right? Because it's always been shrinking me and trying to be unseen. I mean, essentially because I didn't want more grief for existing, more shit to have to deal with just because here I am and somebody saw me. But yeah, so I had to start because my intuition said, hey, gotta start doing the thing. And while it does not look like anything huge has come from it, it feels pretty damn huge because like just the process of me talking through, I think the sun moved, I can come back now. Just the process of me talking through the heavy shit that I've had to work through in this space, you know, that's that much less that I'm carrying now, right? So as I've started to carry less, because I've essentially put down the baggage, it has allowed for me to start figuring out what it is even that I actually do believe, right? And like, I've talked on here a lot too about like, I don't necessarily agree with everything that I say in this space, but I usually, the thought or the thing that comes up, even if it comes out wrong, it still serves a purpose in showing me something about what I do believe, right? And the whole journey to find my way to making sense of what I'm doing, right? So while it doesn't look like anything necessarily is different, I can tell, like, within me, it's like I don't feel like the same person I did when I started. I was afraid of my own ass, y'all. I was afraid of, the wrong people finding me. I was afraid of failing. I was afraid that, this was going to be something that I just couldn't do the thing I was supposed to do. All I've been supposed to do is talk. Let stuff out of my system, release it, free myself from that burden, and through that process, it lightens my load, right? So I'm no longer burdened down by the bullshit beliefs that I once had, like that I needed somebody outside of myself to save me, and then, or that idea of being my father's property until I'm my husband's property, that whole bullshit thing, but like at the same time, it's like, those are things that have been critical for me to work through the deconstructing of my own shitty belief system, right? Like the situation with my ex was absolutely like 1,000% toxic, but it was not exclusively his toxicity. Now, he absolutely was narcissistic. And, I've mentioned on here before too, his court-ordered psych eval said he needed further testing to rule out narcissistic personality disorder. So it was up there, right? So that was one of his things. However, I too was toxic because I was of the mindset that I had to, give, and give, give all that I had to give, and wasn't worthy of receiving anything, ultimately. Like, I basically the system that is in place, the religious one that wants to say that, women are supposed to be subservient to men, that bullshit idea. It's like, the point of that is literally so we're expending ourselves, so we're pouring all that we have to offer out for nothing, right? It's like we're pouring the water into the rocks because there's no plant life there to live, right? So, it's just not going where it needs to be, right? So we could be tending to the plants, but no, we're just pouring all of who we are out for nothing because we've been taught that we're like somehow we're meant to be subservient, and that is absolutely not true. What that is the toxic, distorted masculines that don't want to do the work to become worthwhile men. It's why there are so many man children in relationships where their wives basically have to take on a parenting role, right? It's not a happy situation. It's not a good situation. It's the situation that the system has taught us that we're supposed to accept and go along with. And then while we're locked in our distortion and not healing, not doing our own work to figure things out for ourselves, to resolve issues within before we project them out onto anybody else, right? the idea of if you don't heal your own wound, then you'll bleed on people who didn't cut you, right? That idea. And like, that's the one thing with my family. It's like, as much as I've talked about them a lot on here, obviously, and there's a lot of stuff that's just like, I have constantly bent over backwards to excuse the bad behavior, like they're not grown-ass adults that, should be able to see what they are doing, and yet still choose to do the same shit anyway, right? It's like that point where, when I was in high school, and I got to the point where I said, I will not have kids if I cannot heal the shit that my mom is putting on me to have to heal from, right? Because I do not want any part of passing that on to the next generation. And that is exactly why the system, there again, government and religion are like the world's oldest fuck buddies, right? So they get involved with each other and they fuck all the rest of us over, right? So they want old creepy men to be able to marry little girls, right? So I saw something not that long ago about them wanting to put the drop the marriage age to like 14. It's like, what could possibly go wrong? What could they possibly want? What they want is access to somebody else's life force that they can just take all the life from them and leave them with nothing else for themselves, right? So there again, why the pedophile in chief, has his history of, Epstein files, that he's trying so hard to keep everybody distracted from, to keep from getting into the daylight, because the only reason toxic assholes like that can exist is because they are literally getting access, in that case, kids, right? Getting access to the kids through the whole trafficking ring thing, and they do what they want at the expense of those kids, right? I've talked about how in 2011, when I went into the military, I enlisted in July 2011. One of the things that was required at that point in time was you had to get the check to make sure that your physical parts aligned with what was on your birth certificate. Like that was some big pressing issue. But that is something that they have wanted to push through in like high school sports. Probably younger than that. If they haven't touched that already, then that's something that's, high up there on the religious asshat importance thing. Anyway, what I realized, okay, so there again, that involved, the military entrance processing thing. You go and you have this day, you're in this big room with all the other claim to be females that want to enlist in the military, and you're in your bras and your panties and your socks to keep some dignity, and you have to do the duck walk and all the stupid shit to make sure your body does what it's supposed to do. And then the next part of it is take you alone with the military proven to be female doctor and her assistant, because it can't be one-on-one, because you don't want any accusations or anybody getting out of line on anything, right? So there has to be two. So there's two of them and one of me. And, going in there, making sure everything, the outside parts and the inside parts all say female. And that's what's on my birth certificate. So I'm good to go. I can go in the military, right? What I later realized was, okay, so what happened, right? That was the process for everybody. at that point in time. I don't know what it is now. Don't care. I don't know what it was before then. Don't care. I know what it was when I went in. And so in basic, it gets to a point where it's like this time of year where it's starting to get kind of chilly, and then they're making you do all sorts of stupid shit just so you might have to suffer through these kind of extreme temperatures, and you might be standing behind the Humvee in the snow, and it's fucking cold, and everybody's trying to get the heat from the exhaust and blah blah blah. So to get you used to these insane and stupid circumstances that may or may not ever happen, they keep you outside in the cold for a while, right? Now, I don't think it was really going to kill anybody, but it was chilly. And because it got so hot during the day, because it was Fort Jackson, South Carolina, when you go in, or when you start out in PT, you're not... Okay, PT mornings, we could wear the long sleeves after we went to... and the pants. But once we went to get into uniform, and if whenever we started out in the uniform for the day, whatever, they would say, do not wear the warm gear, right? You don't want to wear the long underwear when it's going to be 90 degrees in the afternoon, right? So it might be fucking cold in the morning, but in the afternoon, they don't want any heat casualties or anything because, you wore more layers than you were supposed to wear. So, but then on the other end of that, once it's coming back down, it's fucking cold again, right? So, so one night we're standing out there. It's like, I don't know, it's evening, right? And it's dark. And we're just standing there, and it's like, it's the last couple of days or whatever, and going into like family day and whatnot, and we had the we were able to go to the bank that time. They had a little ATM. We were able to hit that up. But of course, because there's like a limited number of ATMs, you get to go through like so many at a time can go up and till everybody's back out, and of course you can't just leave anybody behind. you have to have a battle buddy all the time, because do not be caught anywhere in basic training without a battle buddy. And no guy girl pairs unless there is either 2 guys or 2 girls. But also, it's generally not ideal for that to be 2 guys with 1 girl. They tell you these things, right? And, I mean, I guess technically not like they would have had to tell you that, but going back to that appearances thing and, going back to this whole point of, it was so important to get checked out and everything to make sure it's, hims and hers and that's it. But then we're standing there in this formation. It's fucking cold. And so they say, make your battle buddy happy, which just means close ranks a little bit because it's chilly. And, you want that body heat to kind of, you don't want like all that cold air freezing you out while you're standing in there with your battle buddies, right? And dude behind me decides this is the opportune time to lean his junk against me, right? Because I'm a girl. I'm not technically supposed to be there by most people's standards of what is acceptable in the military. I am female. I have decided to go into the military. They proved through the process I was female, as my birth certificate says. So therefore, that means that this male-dominated space, it is okay for them to do whatever they want, right? So if they want to just, put their junk up against some girl because she's there, she clearly wanted it, right? Just because she's a female in the fucking military. So, homeboy behind me does it. Is a white dude, so don't think that's like any sort of, any kind of, racial reference it wasn't. It was just a big, skinny, tall, white dude that felt like it was okay. And me in that moment, 4. My thought, because, going back to my story of, I was basically made to believe that I was a whore my entire life for something that never happened. And because of appearances, right? Because some people thought it looked like it might happen. Some people heard that something happened. And that asshat made sure to tell everybody that it did happen. And got friends that were telling everybody that it did happen. And then my family didn't give me the chance to say anything otherwise, assumed that what was said was true, and just loaded me up with the shame and the guilt, right? And then the next time, or like the next thing was when I was 9, and, my uncle went to take whatever from me, this little kid sitting on this couch, and runs his whole fucking forearm up against my crotch, right? So with this as my background, right? This is the stuff that this is what my life has handed me, right? So clearly, that's not a good perspective to have anyway, right? So in that moment, with this being the background that I carried into this space with me, of being treated and looked at like I was a fucking whore my entire life. And then this guy fucking leans his dick up against me in formation. And my thought in the moment was, who the fuck even cares? Right? And so I leaned back, right? Next day, when it was circling around and the drill sergeant was looking at me in some kind of way like he knew something about me, it's like, that's what it is. And it was that sudden realization that, it's like all the creepy, the sleazy white dudes that have bullied me throughout my lifetime, it has largely been because they somehow deemed themselves, it's, they thought themselves somehow macho or whatever, and they wanted their illusions. That was what mattered, and because I was a female, I was nothing, and they could do whatever they wanted, right? I could be treated however they deemed me acceptable to be treated, right? So if it was shit, that was okay. That was what their conditioning was telling them was okay, right? Which, let's go back to this whole military bit, and there are reasons that sexual assault and rape are so prevalent in the military. And that said, there are reasons that, for the guys that aren't shitbags in the military, there are reasons that there are a lot of people that get so damaged because of the military, right? And, like the good guys that wouldn't do anything like that, and yet you're in this environment where you're basically told that you're supposed to do stuff like that. They're not going to say that in so many words, but they're going to keep showing you all these videos about sexual assault and say, don't do this, don't do this. So then when it's in your head anyway, it becomes a bigger problem because that's what you're seeing, right? That's what you're expecting. And yeah, I like my last little bit in the military, my guard unit. I feel like we watched that damn sexual assault video like 4 or 5 times in a short span of time. So it's one of those things. It's like, because anytime something comes up anywhere in the nation and it gets back to it comes back that it's a thing, then you're watching the video again. It might not have been anybody in this unit, this brigade, this fucking state, right? It might be somebody a couple states over or whatever, but somebody was accused of something, so now we gotta watch the damn video again. right? So it's not actually doing anything but refreshing this idea of this is the thing that you're supposed to expect in this space. But also, and my brother and I had this conversation a while back where he was like, that was one of the things he was struggling with as far as feeling like men are supposed to be protectors, right? They're supposed to be the ones that, do these military things, police things, all those kinds of things, right? The male predominantly male oriented job types, right? He says, so you go in and you're supposed to be a protector, but then you got all these women that are that want to be there, and I'm doing a terrible job of even expressing anything that he was trying to say. But I mean, I get the overview of, you feel like you're supposed to be the protector. And then, like he was told when it was just me and him, after I was born, my mom told him that as a big brother, one of his most important jobs was taking care of me. Right? So he's 2.5 years older than me. He took that shit seriously. He's a Capricorn. He took that shit seriously. So then we're having this conversation. I'm talking about like the, I'm destroying it apart with the masculine and the feminine things and the ideas and blah, blah, blah. And he's like not ready to release the idea of what he's supposed to do on that end. But at the same time, there's this dissonance because, like in my military experience, I chose to put myself in that situation, right? And, doesn't matter if you think it's a noble thing to do, so you go in and whatnot. Once you're there, well, then what are you supposed to do? Because the guys and the girls, and then they're all together, but then the guys are supposed to be protectors, and the girls are supposed to be like fucking at home, tending to the babies and things, and like all this bullshit, right? Okay, I wandered off again. But like, my brother struggled with it, and he, like, mind you, he's always been, to me, he is one of the good guys. He is somebody that is not trying to make everybody else's life a living hell. He's just trying to exist and have his own life and not make things harder for anybody else. But then he's put into this situation where that's essentially what they're telling you is that, there's this or that, and if you're not one, you're the other, and then the other's not supposed to be here. So, you're being fed all of these ideas. It complicates the shit out of stuff, right? It is starting to get chilly. My hands are chilly. Anyway. I'll wander back. I always get on the tangents and then just kind of roll with it. Okay, so I had this idea. Last night I posted the thing, and then I shared more than I normally do. Normally it's just a little blurb. Hey, here are these hawks that I found, or this hawk that I found that I got a cool picture of, right? That kind of thing. Or the vultures thing. I tried to put the vultures thing that I wrote in an Instagram post, and it was too long. But I posted it on YouTube instead with some pictures. I've actually thought about doing it as like a short on YouTube, and maybe even putting it on Instagram as well. But I don't like the shorts on Instagram. I'm not there yet. I know that I will do little short videos on Instagram. I've done a couple, and they were exhausting. It's like the energy of me focusing that much effort and then seeing it pop up enough. It's like, not ready for that, right? I'll get there. But I thought about redoing the video and posting it again as a short. I didn't realize that when I posted it before, I just posted it as a video. I mean, which is fine, but I could also post just the short and it would be okay. I don't know. I've decided to just leave it there. But anyway, so I've been trying to include more that I'm actually writing and processing through as well. And my hand's cramped. Ouch. And so I posted the thing last night with the bunny and the dream and all that stuff. And today, okay, I had this idea last night, this intuitive thing, where I felt like, excuse me, I need to find some pictures just of me from the past few years, just cool. We got the hiccups. Awesome. Or at least one. But like, where was I going with that? Find some pictures that kind of accurately portray me. Like, God, like, oh my God. It chunking up a lot after I moved home and was in the process of getting my divorce, right? There's been a lot of feelings, right? But I started pulling these pictures from Facebook that I feel like is a pretty accurate representation of the past few years. And I've been thinking about putting them as a post on Instagram and talking about my whole healing process, right? It's like this whole fucking thing has been a fucking journey, right? So, and starting with that bit with, I had some that I found from Basic Training 2011. And that's another part of it too, is like, the biggest thing is I'm starting to get real mouthy on Instagram, and like I'm leaving comments where I'm like, okay, like yesterday I left one that, okay, it was a video. I don't remember what the page was that had it on there. It was an interview, like a podcast thing, where this guy was talking about MAGA Christians as a bad representation of Christianity. It's like, but what I said was the MAGA Christians are exactly what the system and religion wants from the whole, right? It wants the people that believe the things, they're so limited on what they take from the scripture, but they're told that these things, it's like they cherry pick, right? The ones that will obsess over the idea of homosexuality is talked about badly in the Bible, but then ignore everything else, right? So yeah, like I was talking about how MAGA Christians are the embodiment of what the system wants from those that buy into the religious bullshit, right? And it was this big long spiel, and I ended with a little blip about how I remember hearing about a church that I think it might have been my aunt's church. One of my aunts, there are a few, where the pastor was caught having an extramarital affair with somebody else in the church that was not his wife. And all he had to do was go in front of the congregation and boo-hoo-hoo his way into their good graces, and I'm just a sinning man and blah, 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 I couldn't control myself, blah, blah, blah. And the church turns it to judging the wife because she is not fulfilling her role as a wife for her husband, for him to go wander. It's like, but that's like the whole system. That's literally what the system fucking wants. That's why narcissism is such a problem in the world today, because that is literally what the system wants, where the bullies bully everybody into silence and then play the victim when something happens and, they get caught doing something they shouldn't do, right? Or like the whole, there are reasons that pedophiles and adulterers hide so well in the church, right? BTK, the serial killer, hid out in the church. There are reasons for that. I'm getting really mouthy about this shit, which there again, I could not have gotten to the point where I am able to, okay, when I write, I'm a lot better at keeping my train of thought in place. When I just talk, I'm kind of all over the place. But this space, this YouTube space, has been critical for me to make sense of the other stuff and to put the pieces together, which is also largely why, you know, the government wants you working all the time and not thinking, because if you think, then you're going to mess them up and make things harder for them. Right? Which there again is one of the things why they tried to, you know, separate masculine and feminine so far from each other. So, you know, the toxic types are all that is able to exist. But the feminine is like, there's enough of us doing this work and healing the divine feminine within all of us, that all of us are affected by that, right? So essentially, like what you're seeing playing out at the, you know, on the government scale, it's like live time, they're watching things crumble around them and they don't know how to do it, so they just get louder and more obnoxious. Or like they don't know how to deal with it to regain control, so it's just, you know, and then posting AI shit that's like ridiculous. And just makes them look like children. Big fan of the, there's the, was it MyCluckHut? There's like a soap group. They make soaps and stuff and rag on all the bullshit that's going on. And yeah, you know, like, anyway, I thought several weeks back that I was supposed to open my page up on Instagram so it's not private anymore, right? There was a span of time where it was open, and then there was a span of time I had it locked down and it was all private and I didn't want anybody knowing anything about me. And then I had this really strong sense that I'm supposed to open it back up so people can, if they want to, can find something out about me, right? And I feel like a big part of that is for these kind of things, like the fact that I am getting mouthier and I'm starting to do a lot more, starting to say some shit that's going to make people not very happy. And yeah, so like the big thing that I started that point with was I feel like, okay, like if I talk about my healing journey the past few years, you know, I was thinking about starting it from the basic training version of me, because that's basically like this whole next, the next phase of my life, right? There was the up through undergrad. Then there was the 4 years where I was after undergrad, where I was with the dude that I thought I was going to marry. And then as soon as we broke up, you know, essentially I jumped into the basic training stuff as a means of getting away from that space and, you know, crumbling on that end, you know. But essentially when it comes back around to it, my ex that I married was basically just a delayed rebound, you know. But it was like this whole, it was like a systematic crumbling of, or chipping away at everything that I thought I was, you know. And then of course you go into basic training and that you're told that, you know, they're tearing you down so they can build you up stronger. That's not quite exactly how that works either, though, you know, which is, again, why there are so many broken people in the military, right? And, you know, like, okay, Jolly Good Ginger on Instagram talks a lot about how poverty is what got him in the military, right? Because they go and tell you all these stories and about how, you know, you're going to be a hero and go save lives and do things. But then you get over, you know, I think he was talking about like Afghanistan and whatnot, and being seen as the bad guy because they had, you know, they had homes, they had their existence fine and separate from us, until, we get told that we're going over there for something good and to protect people, and then you actually get there and you're actually the villain, right? So it's like, and the fact that there is such a high homelessness population that, is former vets, or mental health crisis among vets, all these things, there is a reason that the suicide rate is so high. And it's because you buy into the bullshit that they try to feed you. And then there's all this dissonance because everything that you're told, you basically have to confront all these ways in which it's actually a lie, right? And how do you make sense of that? Well, when it doesn't go well most of the time, right? So anyway, yeah, since I talk about military stuff periodically, since I talk about my seminary stuff a little bit, I felt like part of what I need to include in this post is, shot from basic training or me in the uniform. And that's basically from basic training because I didn't really wasn't in a lot of pictures after that, right? I was the weekend warrior, 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer kind of a thing. And I ended up on this, was it UPAR? I don't even remember what the thing was or what it stood for. I think it was UPAR. But I don't remember what it stood for. But it was something about taking pictures and making it look like, this is this is the shit you're supposed to want to do, right? How wonderful it is to be in the military and to be serving your country, even though you're not doing jack shit except for cleaning the floor at the armory that you go to, right? So, yeah. Dumb shit, right? But that ended up being a thing that I was doing, was taking pictures of people, but not being in any pictures. So, yes, my military experience, like I've talked a lot about that on here anyways, was not much, right? I was in, and then I broke my brain, and then I was out before my contract was over. But I still feel like that and the seminary stuff, especially since I'm starting to get as mouthy as I am on the religious end of things, I feel like those are things I need to include and kind of talk about the whole process. Set me on a mission today of trying to figure out, or trying to find my seminary graduation pictures. It's like, where'd everything go? The problem was I was married to my ex, and for my graduation, he had the camera, which, it was fine. That camera was a whole issue in and of itself, but I got it because, there was a fight over that damn thing. It was like we went Black Friday shopping. It was me, my cousin, and my aunt, and he kept getting in the middle of it and just being a dick. And, I was like, hey, there's a really good deal on this camera. We could probably use a camera. And he was getting ready to go to Germany for job training, for job training for 6 months, right? So maybe that might be something that he would want. Yeah, so we ended up getting the camera, and, he had it for his thing. And then, of course, that was what he took pictures of from my graduation. It was on the camera. So they didn't get posted to Facebook. So then it's like, why do I not have any pictures from my seminary graduation? It's like, I know it happened. So I went on a quest today to figure out where those pictures were. And I did get them posted on Facebook. And then I nabbed one off of it for my phone so I could put it on Instagram. That was a whole irritating thing, though, because I had 20 pictures from 2011 to the one I took that I really liked, where my hair is all these colors right after it was freshly done. And it was like the best picture I've taken in a long time, I think. And I used it for a cover on a video. I've thought about changing my profile picture to that one, but I also really like my shirt that says "This place sucks" with the alien on it. That's in my profile picture, so I haven't changed it, but I kind of go back and forth on it. Anyway, but that's like the one, like the end point, right? And just talking about the healing journey and the breaking down of things, and then trying to find my way and being all confused and how hard this fucking healing process is. But yeah, I tried to post that like 3 times earlier, and the problem was I was kind of, only once was I sitting there focused on it fully, but I was like trying to put the dates, make little side notes like how I ended up having the flag and the flag bearer or whatever the fuck, I don't know, in basic training. It's like there's a picture of me like that was on the Facebook page. That was me holding the flag as, we're getting the thing changed going into the next cycle for basic, because there's the red phase, white phase, and blue phase, I believe. Blue phase being the last, obviously. So obviously, only obvious because red was the start point. And that was the last one I said. But yeah, so when we got the flag switched out to remind us which phase we were in. Yeah. Anyway, if did not go through like 3 times. So I figured I was going to take myself away from it, take a break, and then I'll try again when I get back home. And the nice thing is, because I didn't take the pictures, or I didn't take screenshots of them in any particular order. And, with the way Instagram works on pictures, I can't get the date in there. So I've figured out the dates. I can remember them and know what I wrote on each picture to try again. The complication was, I think, excuse me, man, my voice is going to go now. I think the complication was that I was trying to put music with it, and it just didn't want music. So maybe I just need to not put music with it. I don't know. But yeah, I completely lost it like 3 times, and it's like, fuck. So then I just had to walk away. So I've walked away, and I've done a video that is now at 1 hour and 11 minutes. Because of course. And so I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up so I can go back home and work on getting this posted. Also, my computer kind of freaked me out earlier because I had like blue screens on like my main computer, or my computer, and then my my extra monitor. I was like, don't be blue. Don't be blue. Last time I had a blue screen of death, it was not good. I know my computer it's not happy. It's a little old and a little full, but I need to get in there and like get my pictures moved over to my little hard drive or extra drive thing that I have for it, so I don't lose things. But we're going to just say thank you to the universe that's not going to happen. We're going to keep everything that we need to keep, get everything put on the thing, and all will be fine and dandy. And then I'll get a new computer. I'm going to manifest that in existence, and all will be well. But yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to wrap this up. As always, I appreciate you. Until the next time. See ya.